Hello, this is the Eddie Network Podcast, and I'm your host, Ed Breniger. My guest today is Lauryn De Grado. She is self-described as a Humanaut, and she'll describe what that means, as well as a ski instructor in Utah. And our conversation is quite sparkling as we talk about many of the things that I'm hearing talked about all over the place of awareness and consciousness and reality and the human body. And she has a perspective which I think you'll find very, very interesting. I'm glad you're here for this episode of the Eddie Network podcast. So you, so when did you move to Salt Lake City?
1990.
So you've
I've
seen a lot of change there.
Yeah. Not as much change in Salt Lake as in Las Vegas. I mean, Salt Lake is in between two other uh middle-sized, larger towns, Provo, Orem, and then Ogden with,
Yeah.
there's little townships all along the corridor, the I-15 corridor. Um and then you got mountains capped on both sides just like you do in Las Vegas. So it's like they don't have as much room to grow. They've gotten some stuff in the southwest section, but it's built. I mean
Yeah.
now they're going up. They're going up everywhere. They've ruined Sugar House with all of the
Oh, yeah. I know Sugar House. Yeah.
apartment buildings. Yeah. It was a sweet community. Now it's just noisy.
Yeah. I have a friend who's just moved to Park City, moved last year to Park City from Jackson. And she's loving it there.
Yeah.
And you're a ski instructor
Deer Valley.
at Deer Valley.
Yep. So I'm there in Park City in the winter too.
So, um, how did how did you become a ski instructor? What was the process of that happening?
That is a really funny story because I was not a skier. I was hired because I'm a teacher. And I didn't know anything. I mean, I'd skied a handful of times, five, six times, poorly most of the time. And I was just, they were doing an open house, a hiring fair. And I walked in there and just was wandering around and, talking about this. And they said, select three areas. And I didn't select ski instruction. And one of the guys said to me, well, how would you like to be a ski instructor? I'm like, I don't know how to ski. And we don't care. You know how to teach. We'll teach you how to ski. You teach ski instruction. They start you with little 3-year-olds, work your way up to 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 4 and 5-year-olds. So it was just a progression for me. And over the course of 10 years, I've become a skier. I'm fairly decent skier. And yeah, it's just been kind of wild.
Do you ski on your days off?
Yeah. Not every day off. I'm not one of those that is necessarily going to try to get 100 days every year. I'm satisfied with 60, but for a lot of them, it's a big
That's a
deal to
lot.
try to get to 100 days.
Yeah.
60 is a good number.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm of an age where I don't need to overdo, the work skiing because it can be hard on your knees. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's been very good to me.
Well, it was when I moved to Jackson, I probably would have skied if I was younger, but I realized that I have the genetics to live a very long life, and I need my body to last.
Correct.
And so I didn't ski, but I hiked and did all those other things, rode a bike, and
There's all sorts of things in the opportunity zone for activity, right? You find things that suit you, your level of risk, your appetite for experience, it's
so I'm curious since I'm talking to someone who's spent their whole life in the West. and not the Western coastal West, but the desert intermountain West,
Yes.
and which is really my favorite place. I love North Carolina. I love my home, but I really love the West. And so, how do I mean? There are going to be a lot of people who watch this, and they're going to be curious about where you live, and they don't have a. I don't think they'll have a clue as to when we say, "Oh, the Desert West" or the Intermountain West or something like that, that they have any real sense of what that means. So, how do you describe where you have spent your life to people who have never been there? If if that's a way to, because I'm curious as to what you'll say.
So the Intermountain West is more Idaho, Utah, um, Montana, Wyoming, right? So kind of anything past California and Nevada. And Nevada's more, I think, delineated as the West. So they are actually very different regions. We have a lot more green and a lot different tree structures here in Salt Lake City versus Las Vegas. Um, Las Vegas does have one tiny little ski resort, Kyle Canyon, and I don't think they get to ski every year. I don't know if it opens every year. And I've never skied there, but it's now on my bucket list to at least check it out once. Um, so the difference is temperature, right? So St. George, you can take Utah and split it in kind of two zones where St. George is very much like Las Vegas. It's 120 miles away. But the more central you go, you get, into Cedar City, it starts being more mountainous. And the further you go up, the more mountainous it becomes, the more variety of trees that are there. And there are, a number of forests as well. Um, so it's visually different, although there's still a lot of scrub in both states. There's a lot more green and trees in northern Utah than
And the weather at higher elevations is different than
it's
the.
about 10 degrees cooler here than St. George and about 15 degrees cooler than Las Vegas. That northern uh, edge really does. I mean, the trough for skiing comes right across Salt Lake City when it comes. It's just like the weather pattern is perfect for Park City, for Big and Little Cottonwood Canyons. It's
Mhm.
remarkable the snow we get here.
Yeah, you get a lot. I mean, and it's similar to what we would get up in Jackson.
Yep.
And you either love it or you hate it.
If you're plowing it, if you're pushing it around with a shovel, you don't like it. If you're skiing on it, you'll love it.
Yeah,
That's my experience.
I think you're right. And I loved it, and I love the cold, and I miss the cold, and um, but I try to get out there. So, uh, so what do you do when you're not doing ski instruction?
Mostly what I've been doing is on LinkedIn, I have one of my characteristics as a humanaut. And
Yeah.
so basically what I do is I study all things human. I started with a master's degree in exercise physiology. So studying bodies in motion, watching people move through space is something I just automatically do. And I've always been fascinated with people and the variety of types of people and the different motivations. As a personal trainer in the school, I was always curious about why people needed other people in order to be motivated to do the work. So just like with labor, where somebody breathes back and forth with a laboring woman, um, with personal training, I found that if I didn't count for the people, they were completely lost. They would not they would not be able to do the bodily movements and speak about it at the same time. which I thought was really odd. So I would count for them, and then they would talk about other things. They would yammer about other things, but they wouldn't really focus. They didn't have any true focus for the work they were doing. It's like one part of them is moving and one part of them is trying to escape moving. And so that always drew my attention into what motivates people. And two of the other pieces go in the M group is memory, motivation, and metabolism. How does our metabolism, is it affected by our memory? How is motivation affected by memory? And I was trying to find ways to, I'm not 100% sure what I was looking for at the time, but now I can say I was looking for ways to draw people into themselves so that they would be more present with the experience rather than in their mind distracted, and kind of avoiding what they were physically doing.
What do you mean by metabolism? Let's define that.
Sure, that's the way that nutrients are broken down that through digestion. And some people have faster metabolism, some people have slower metabolism. But metabolism is somewhat in our control depending on what we ingest.
Hmm.
And so when we have a bunch of people eating a bunch of processed food, that has a tendency to slow metabolism because it's not what the body is really needing to maintain health.
Hmm.
And so it's disruptive and it slows the metabolism. And I was looking at, if we're lifting weights to strengthen our nervous system and our bodies, why are we not also focused on metabolism and what we put into our bodies when it just you can get somebody maybe to work out or you can get somebody to diet for a little while, but you can't get them to maintain it. And so that's the motivation piece. How would they tie together so that you get people actually present doing the thing that they say they want to do?
I have found um, my metabolism remaining fairly not fast. It's not fast. It's not a fast, but high energy. Um, but for shorter periods of time. And
When
so
you say high energy, I need you to be a little more explicit about
sustainable energy at a high level
for
for
moving, just for moving, for being.
or for working.
Okay.
Like I'm sitting here at my desk and I'm writing. And I can sit here and write 2 or 3 thousand words, in 2 or 3 hours and totally focused and all of a sudden my metabolism slows down. And I don't go looking for something to eat. I go take a nap and I recover that way.
Well, and I would suggest that has nothing to do with metabolism, but
Okay.
cognitive exhaustion. So in
Yeah,
that the brain needs resources, what you're finding is that sleep is the resource that's needed, not calories.
that's right. You're exactly right. And that's been true for a long time. And so one of the, I wrote my first book, came out in 2018, and I wrote it after I'd moved to Jackson. And I found that um, that I would go to bed about 8:30 and I'd wake up at 1, 1:32, and that I'd have my mind was fresh, and I could work for another 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours, and then get another couple of hours of sleep, and I was really pretty much done by about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And so I began to say, well, my day starts when I go to bed at 8:30. That's when my day starts.
Right.
And the rest of my day after about 10 or 11 in the morning is kind of stuff to talk to people and go do stuff and go walk around town, take a hike, go do something else that would invigorate me.
And so that would be the difference, say, between high cardiovascular output and just meandering. So you're allowing your mind to meander throughout the day, giving it open space to explore, which I think will enhance your focus after you've slept to go. It's a really interesting cycle
Yeah.
where, if you know the story of the fable of the cobbler and the elves.
No.
So there's a cobbler and he's getting older, and so what he's decided to do is he's going to prepare the material, the shoe material for to just cut everything out at night, and in the morning when he's fresh, he's going to put it all together. Well, in the morning when he goes to put it together, he finds that they're already done. And this goes on for a while. And one morning he gets up very early to go, just to try to figure it out. And he sees all these little elves, naked elves, just going away at putting the shoes together, stitching everything. And so in repayment, he started making clothes. In the time that he would be making the shoes, he started making clothes for them and left them there one night. And so they were overjoyed to have clothes.
Huh.
And so I think that the mind and the body kind of operate in the same way, or the conscious and the unconscious, maybe even, where if you set the tone consciously, your unconscious will process the information and then provide you with a lot more effort with very little energy expenditure.
That's precisely what my experience has been. Now, so let me ask another question about that. Um, I went through uh, well, it's really 3 years of some physical problems. So I lost hearing in this ear, which brought about vertigo and loss of balance. So I have poor balance, and and then 2 years ago, my left hip wore out, and it took about 8 months to get to the point where I could have surgery. But I had hip replacement surgery. But prior to that, the hip was, extremely painful, and so it robbed me of some of that mental energy that I had that would allow me to sit and write 5 or 6 thousand words a week. And
Even though you still had the time for it, you didn't have the wherewithal.
that's right. So how does pain affect us in that way? Can you bodily pain? That's what I'm really talking about.
Bodily pain is a signal, right? And it's a persistent signal.
Mhm.
Even if your body is actually healed, it can still send a signal saying that there's a problem. And that problem is like noise disrupting any steady stream of focus that you might be able to have. And so the shifting back and forth between attending to the noise of pain and attending to what you're trying to do can disrupt vigor, vitality, and make it, well, you're using a lot more energy in the task switching process. That type of mental energy that you're describing.
Well, what I found was I had to shift my attention to listening to my body. And so in the 8 months between that point in time when the cartilage in my left hip was totally gone, I'm bone on bone, and I had hip replacement surgery. During that time, I had an odd thing to happen that when I would stand, and it didn't happen every time, but when I would stand, my feet would go numb and my legs would go numb, and I'd have to sit down. And neither my my hip surgeon or my spinal specialist could figure out why that was happening. There was some neurological thing that was going on. And there was a situation where I was standing in a group of people, and all of a sudden, my feet and my legs went numb. And the two guys that were standing next to me, I said, "Catch me." And they caught my elbows as I was falling. They dragged me over to a seat. I sat there for a minute. I was fine. I was back walking, and it didn't recur.
That's Interesting. And did the surgery end that experience?
Yes, it did.
Sciatic.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've concluded. And so it's it is really I find the human body very fascinating,
So do I.
and my own body fascinating. And and the thing I wonder about, maybe you have something to say to this. Like I know people who basically their bodies and life wear out when they hit their 60s, and they're gone before they reach 70. And then you have people like in my family, like both of my grandfathers lived to 94. I lost two of my aunts this year, my mother's sisters. One was 99, 2 months before celebrating her 100th birthday, and the other was 91. And then there's another sister who is still alive, and she's 98. So that's not because they took care of themselves.
Nope. Got nothing to do with genetics, does it?
Well, I don't know what it has to do with.
Well, I got a theory, and that is it has to do with awareness,
Okay.
presence being. So if you do any energy work, or if you're familiar with anything to do with energy work, you know that we have these these different energy channels throughout our body. And when they are awake, when they are active, let's say when they're active, let's not say they're awake. When they're active, they're doing things for our body in addition to the basic things that would normally be done. So if those basic things aren't being done, or excuse me, if those energy things aren't being done, then the life isn't the same. Life is very different for the two types of beings. Um, and I can't say whether the state of awareness is evolutionary or whether it's situational. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm still exploring whether all people have the capacity to be aware or not.
Hmm.
And that leads me to what I've been exploring most recently, which is biospirituality. And that involves, you know, the body as having a degree of consciousness that is rich in vigor and vitality. It enhances vigor and vitality. The single most relevant feature for long and enjoyable life, is vitality and vigor. Same thing, but they are bound to awareness along with arousal. And this basically arises through the instinctual network. We have basic instincts, right? That can develop into more sophisticated instincts in social environments, in work environments. And that awareness is where life really starts and where good health kind of is more maintainable than if it just isn't doing its job.
Is
What if
it
your instincts completely shut down and decided, I don't like the way you're living this life, and I don't really care if you continue?
so it's like turning switches on and off?
It's awareness is aware. It's not sleepwalking.
Well, uh, this is interesting because this is a subject that I encounter with people a lot, consciousness. They like to talk about it.
No,
And
no, 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 no. I didn't talk about consciousness.
I know. I'm coming to that. Um, and there's kind of two streams that I find presented to me.
Agreed.
One is that consciousness is this mental apprehension of something, and the other is that it is the our being. It's something different, and it's the being which exists in the cosmos, you know,
So
and
being and awareness for me are the same thing.
mhm.
Being informs awareness. I mean, they're tied. It's I think, and it gets into the really interesting thing about what what is spirituality. And I'd like to talk a little bit about space as far as interstitial space, the
Uh-huh.
space between people, the space within an environment, and then the space beyond our atmosphere. And that each of them requires different degrees of awareness stays the same, but consciousness has to go different, has it's different in each of the different modalities.
Is what you're describing, um, could it be described as like having a relationship with something that's separate from you that you're now connected to, and it is feeding you information that you're aware of, and you're processing that and so you become aware and you understand better that thing that's a part of you, apart from you, like
That's the question, right? I think that's a more important question than what is consciousness.
yeah.
Um, the way I see it is an unfolding of development, anoetic awareness is not terribly sophisticated, but some people really develop a high sophisticated awareness. They're aware of things because they learn throughout their lifetime, right? So I wrote a paper for a PhD sports psych class. I was trying to get into a grad program in neuroscience, and he had taken us through all of these different models, and from it we were supposed to write a self-help guide. So I came up with, well, I'm going to take all of the different models that he used and I'm going to put them into a story that describes how we evolve or develop through each of the different stages and what is required for that to occur successfully. And then secondarily, how can we fill in the gaps in development that got missed and then created, you know, uh, defensive curiosity rather than open curiosity. Awareness mediates open curiosity. When it doesn't have its resources met, it becomes defensive and trying to get its needs met. You can see this toggle switch between people. When they are comfortable and relaxed, they are more animated and open. But when they feel constrained or uncertain and they don't know how to manage uncertainty, they'll start defending or attacking, and they start falling into the fight flight, which is again developmentally in the enteric nervous system, which is your second brain in the belly. The beauty is 25 years ago when I first began studying this stuff, none of that stuff was really out there. McGilchrist had written a book, Master and the Emissary,
Mhm.
uh, but that was still after I discovered awareness in myself and went, what the hell is this? What is this that's moving me and animating me? And it created great anxiety in my mind. And so I went through 25 years of trying to decipher what is happening here in our nervous systems, in our experiences. How is our environment, the context, uh, influencing these different developmental things? And because each person might have a different developmental gap, or the coping strategies for those gaps are different, we all have then turned into this variant of developmental beings who, when we just stop trying to do, we can then recognize the beingness underlying all of it and develop communication, intrapersonal communication or not. I have some people who recognize, hey, it's like this is your gut instinct. Some people will say, it tells me yes or no. I said, well, does it also tell you I don't know or maybe? And then I do get sometimes hits that are both or some kind of a mix and not quite right. So this is anoetic intelligence. It's not speaking, it's demonstrating through signal.
Hmm.
In the process of my discovery, I discovered that it can become incredibly sophisticated speaker,
I totally agree with you.
and it's speaking to you now.
And what you're describing is what my experience over the last 50 years has been. And my first connection to someone who was writing about this was Michael Poliani,
Not
who
familiar.
was he was a mathematician and later he became a philosopher, but he wrote about the tacit dimension.
Yeah, there you go. Right?
And it's an intuitive, embodied experience of being connected to the outside world. It's not abstract.
Doesn't do abstraction well.
No.
Can
And
learn, it can learn to recognize things without the abstraction, which then tells me that the abstraction is what's BS. And then we can revert back to a more simplified method of communication. I
what
think that I think that a lot of the abstraction is people trying to be smart. So speaking back to the article I wrote, Carol Dweck
yeah.
highlights the three stages of childhood development where being smart means people will love me if I'm smart. Then they might go to people will love me if I'm beautiful, or they will love me. And if they don't love me, maybe I just need to develop some power and make them love me, right? So that's the way my story is written, where you fall into these pitfalls, and then here's an area of your life that might need to be reviewed so that you can find out why your behavior is as it is because it's arrested.
This thing that we're doing right now, this podcast, is is designed to do exactly what you're describing. It's unscripted, so we don't have a plan. We just start talking, and all of a sudden, we're reading the signals, and we're going down.
It is a rabbit hole. Call it what it is, because that's how you get to beyond.
Well, I think it's kind of the wolf something, chasing something that they see that's out there that they want to go discover and get a hold of. That's it's less going down into a hole and finding it dark and impenetrable. It's more of the discovery process of
Sure, but the space that I'm describing discovering is interstitial space. What information is in junk DNA? What information is in the empty spaces between your cells? And when mind
okay.
and instinct collaborate this, mind can get that's to scale. It can scale to any size it wants. It can be as big as the cosmos. It can be as small as the inside of a needle, small enough to get through. So it's the interplay between these two aspects, but they have to get along. And keep in mind, who created the mind? Instinct creates the mind. And then cognitive, social environments, and then ultimately school and the cognition starts feeding into the mind. And at some point, sometimes that mind stops belonging to instinct. And that's, I think, the point we're at right now.
You mean in society.
Yes, sir.
So now describe what you mean by that. You, what are an example of what you're talking about?
Sure. I wrote an article that I posted on LinkedIn on how to develop a false self.
Hmm.
And what it describes is four steps. And I don't know that I can call them to mind right now because I'm not in that space. But, the first thing is the first lie, or the first time the implicit decides to hide. And it realizes that it can deceive.
I think I read this.
So when in the learning to deceive phase, how far does implicit nature go in deception? and what 2, 3-year-olds doesn't lie like crazy, exploring what their free will allow them, what their environment will allow them, right? So if the deception continues for a period of time, especially if it's mixed with hiding, or now there's shame, then you get to a point where that's all you know how to do. You didn't develop any of the natural processes at 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You were busy deceiving. And so now you have constructed a false self that doesn't know left from right, up from down, forward from backwards. It's very much lost. And it creates a disorganized thinking pattern anytime anyone tries to point at it. Chaos ensues, drama, disorganized thinking. The goal becomes to disrupt the person in front of them, challenging their behavior.
So let me ask you this. Um, I'm a minister. I don't know if you knew that. I'm a retired minister, but I didn't spend much time as a parish minister because I was too interested in change.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
But what I found was, and I find this is not a church thing, it's just general people that people who in particular are married, they get married and what she just described has been hidden and has remained hidden, but as the complexity of life with children and jobs and all that happens, then all that hidden stuff comes out and they either learn how to deal with it or it breaks them apart and they can't survive.
Okay. That's where the challenge for development is either met or failed to be met.
Right. So you're a, shall I, um, you're a person who wants to help people. You're a helper.
I'm a person who cares. I don't necessarily need to be the person that helps.
Okay.
Person that cares about the species, the cultures, and I grew up in the 70s. My teenage years were in the 70s, and I can remember the when friends talked, people touched, all the things that have been lost, I've
Yeah.
been craving. And so, am I trying to help others, or am I trying to return to a time where I felt truly free? Well, in the process, I'm helping so that the door can potentially reopen to true and honest communication.
Are you, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but how this thing that you're recovering, if that's the right word, or rediscovering, or whatever the word is, how um how much of that is a product of your family uh generationally before you were born that then became a part of the life that you had as a child? I mean, that's what you're saying. But was it something that was present in, say, your parents as they were children and your grandparents going back like that? Because that's
There's
it.
no, yeah, there's no way for me to know that. I never met my mother, my father's parents. They died before my parents were older when they had kids. My mother and father, my mother's mother and father, I met my grandfather a couple of times. Um, but I don't know anything about them.
Okay.
So could they be feeding into my innate curiosity? It's possible, but I think it's unlikely. I think that I came to this out of a deep desire to understand what was wrong with my family from a transpersonal space.
Hmm.
And I didn't know I was in a transpersonal space. So that extrapolated out into the totality of humanity.
Yeah, I understand that. This is a not the same conversation, but I've had similar conversations with people. And and to me, that's fantastic.
It's very vigor rich. It's very vital.
Yeah. So our society is not set up for this, though.
It's not. It's actually set up for the exact opposite.
So
You're familiar.
how did we get here? How did we get to this place where it's so broken?
Well, the beauty of it being so broken is it's undeniable at this point. I mean, this process has been going on across aeons. We had the robber barons, right?
Yeah.
There is, there are ruling elites who would like to continue to rule
Hmm.
and never have to be accountable for their choices,
Yeah.
or the way they go about gaining resources. And then there are people clamoring, the robber barons clamoring to be like them. And they give them a taste. The elites give them a taste so that they can imagine the possibility. But then they don't give them any of the leverage, any of the footholds, any of the ways to actually achieve that. So you'll see a time in history where the old money and the new money, right, are at odds. About 100 years ago. And
Yeah.
that's about the same time that a guy named Bernays, who
Yeah.
happens to be uh, Freud's nephew, developed the system that many of the viewers who watch this might be a part of, which is marketing
That's right.
management. And so if I was going to get to the underbelly of the beast, I'd say the reason we're going to know anything is because Bernays went too far.
I think there's a natural evolution as things seem to work in some way, even if they are based on a lie. They may work for a period of time. I describe what you're saying as the spectacle of the real. And it's a series of spectacles that happens in a serialized fashion very rapidly every day on social media, in the media itself, in the news. It's breaking news. A minute ago, these little flashing signs.
That was constructed based on the weaknesses and the limitations of the system that I'm describing, the tacit system of the implicit awareness. And it has made it so that it doesn't develop. It doesn't develop. And then, so in a way he wins, but in a way he loses. He says, I know how to manipulate the implicit nature, right?
Right. That's exactly
But
right.
he went too far. And now the implicit nature is going around and 17-year-old boys and 16-year-old boys and killing people because its arousal is untamed and raw and it wants expression. It
Well,
hasn't fully bought into the culture.
well, there's no concept of relationship.
Why would they care? No
That's
one's
right.
ever loved them.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I mean, it's true for the politicians. It's true for marketers. It's true for anyone who has some semblance of power. The major question is, why do you care about people? And most of them would say, well, I care about my family, but I don't care about people. In fact, I
Correct.
distrust people. And
Correct.
but you see, I don't think that this is either a sustainable or a winning proposition.
It's not. But as people are realizing, and I've been pushing implicit awareness for 25 years and got cut off at the knees and cut off at the knees and cut off at the knees every step of the way. It's only been in the last 3 years, and I was still 3 years ago getting cut off at the knees. The last year, things are changing. The cat is out of the bag. More people are aware of somatic information. What happens when you go into the empty spaces of your body through mind, through meditation, through exploration, through discovery, is you discover information embedded in our empty space. This is presumptive to say, but I'm going to say it because I truly think that that's where there's information streaming. Maybe that's someplace that junk DNA sits. I don't know. But you get a little taste of that, and it's nearly mystical in its awe, in its wonder, right? And so now you start exploring other spaces, the idea space or the new sphere. And you start realizing ideas are competing. They call them egregores, right? But when you go beyond that, you go beyond our atmosphere and you enter into outer space. Why do so many people go out into space have a altering experience?
Well,
Something is feeding that
yeah.
in
Uh,
space.
well, the constraints upon their life are removed.
I don't know that that's the answer because their mind would still remain constrained with all the same. I mean, you're only up there for 90 seconds, a lot of these people. It's not long enough to have a something, something, I don't know, but I just finished a 11-day training where what we did was explore various degrees of space. And what I heard from people and it related to how far can your mind travel and what is the information stream available through the coherent nervous system, left and right hemisphere, married with the implicit. If
Mhm.
all of them are in alignment, then what is in alignment material will come to, right? Search and you will find. Well, if you're holding a state, the information will come find you.
Yeah.
And I think that information from space is now being decoded. Some people call it downloaded. I think of it as uploaded into our awareness. And we're going, okay, we cannot solve this problem from where we are. The problem is so grand and it's such scale that nothing aside from magic potentially could alter the course of our trajectory.
Do and this is my last question. Do you in as you've gone through these last 3 years and you are seeing things or experiencing things or where do you come down on the future? Do you have hope for the future or are you just skeptical or what's your sense of the future?
My sense of the future is there is so much newness available. And if people source from that, they'll find new options that will subjugate the old options into obscurity.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And what I have found is that the chief inhibitor to all of this is how we have structured organizations to deny people their
That's
inherent
wrong.
humanity.
I agree with you 100%.
So they can't think, and so they can't feel, they can't know, they just perform to the mean.
And that is breaking. It's
Yes.
been breaking since COVID. And the more that breaks,
I saw it 25 years ago. That was one of my first conclusions when I became a consultant was the system of organizations, the institutional system is broken and it's going to fail and it's going to and so how do we make it fail rapidly so
that's right.
so we can get on with
That's
the
right.
future
That's right. Bring it
and
on. It's ready. I believe very wholeheartedly that the future is ready, but
and
we
it,
have to be ready for it.
and it doesn't take 50% of the population to understand it. It takes a few percent.
And
So
it matters.
our conversation is just another example of what is emerging, and I thank you for being here. And I had no idea this is where we would go, and it's been a delight. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I hope that uh, you will continue to share your wisdom with the world and allow people to be influenced by you.
Well, influence isn't my objective by any means. Autonomy is. Awakening the autonomy of others warms my heart.
Okay. So let's say you speak with authenticity about your autonomy, and then that has an effect upon people. That's
Uh,
what I mean
they
by that.
can't not feel that. They can't not feel that. Every person I talk to about this type of thing knows that what I'm saying carries truth. They feel it viscerally. It's waking up the very thing that's been put to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you,
I
Lauren.
very much
Great to have
pleasure.
you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you for watching the Eddie Network podcast. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. I think it will spark some thoughts in your life, and maybe it will motivate you to do some things that maybe you were reluctant to do otherwise. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye bye.